Okay, my name is Maris Curran. I'm the writer and director of Five Nights in Maine.
Well, what an extraordinary film. Um, there's so much going on, but it's also so quiet and contained. Tell me about the idea for this film. It's such a hard topic, and it's so hard to translate those kinds of emotions when somebody that you're very close to passes away, and just all the internalization that goes on. Tell me about the journey that you took in creating this film.
The film to me is about love and loss and compassion. I'm really interested in making empathetic cinema, so cinema that has compassion at the base. And where that comes in this film for me is it's really about two people who are experiencing the most pain that they have felt. And it's about this awakening to somebody else's pain. It's about what happens in the moment when you're kind of feeling the most lost and isolated and sad. And instead of turning inward, actually turning outward and being able to look out and see somebody else's pain. And I think that there's transformative potential in that moment. And to me, that's really what the film is about.
Tell me about the first scene, because you, as a filmmaker, you have to bring us in the first, probably the most you have is like a minute to kind of get our attention. But it's such a beautiful scene. But it's also very quiet. Tell me about that first scene.
In the first scene, we see this couple together, and we see them in one of the most intimate places, which is their bed. We see them kind of stripped down. And it was written very similarly to how it is. It's very naturalistic. It's very close. I think that, just as you said, you don't have a tremendous amount of time to kind of pull somebody in, but also to believe their love and believe their relationship and really establish what is their world. So it's a little bit like a cocoon. It's sweet and it has a little bit of edge. You can feel a tenderness and a passion.
Well, you mentioned the closeness, and a lot of the shots are very close, and that's also hard to pull off. Tell me what were your influences cinematically that made you choose those kinds of frames, those kinds of shots.
Well, I think, one thing, when you're trying to get inside the head of a character in cinema, it can be very hard. Something that's really easy to do in a novel, for example. And I think that when you're making emotional cinema, when you're saying, I want you to walk in the shoes of this man for 85 minutes, you have to really make a series of choices that say, how? How are you going to do that? How are you going to get inside of this character's head? And one of the decisions that I made along with my cinematographer, Sofiane Alfani, was to really narrow the frame and to try, in order to get into this space of grief, in order to get into his emotional space. So it's really, grief is this kind of claustrophobic, insular, isolated experience of one, and that was kind of the decision behind that. It's Sofiane Alfani's first English language film, first American film. He shot Blue is the Warmest Color and Timbuktu. I think in seeing Blue is the Warmest Color was one of the things that really drew me to him, because it's this very sensual, kind of immediate, visceral film, and I'm interested in making sensual cinema.
And it's also very uncomfortable, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying it makes you, as an audience member, react to it instead of, oh, I'm sitting here watching a film. It's like, no, I feel the tension and the uncomfortableness of not only the topic, but of the way that you made your decisions as a filmmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the goal, right? Is so instead of watching, you're experiencing. And that was one of the reasons why we chose to shoot it that way.
And tell me about just extraordinary talent. I mean, great cinematographer, and then you have these great actors. How did all this come about for you?
It was quite a long process. So from writing to completion, it was about 5 years. So, and that's development, but that's bringing on and finding the right collaborators and financing. David, from when he said yes to when we premiered at TIFF, it was 3.5 years. He also produced the film. And I think, Actors are looking for roles where they get to do something different than they've done before. Actors are looking for roles where they get really kind of meaty, sometimes emotional parts. And I think that that's what this film is about. It's about relationships. It's about people who are in difficult circumstances. And I was very fortunate that I got this tremendous
Yeah.
group of people to work with.
I mean, and it must be so wonderful for them because there aren't enough parts in Hollywood for enough really good parts for women, for people of color. So I think you did a great job of not falling into any stereotypes or anything like that. And even like having an interracial couple, which is, you rarely see that in Hollywood in film or television. So tell me about just those. Was that your goal too? I mean, was it originally an interracial couple?
It was written as an interracial couple. I mean, I think for me, it's important to not be diverse or inclusive for the sake of it. It reflects my life, and behind the camera reflects also as much diversity as in front of the camera. I think it's important for me that my art looks like my life, and I think that's different for every person. But it's essential that, I'm a first-time, female director, and that's a challenge in and of itself.
If it were really in anybody else's hands, it could have been like a cliche, or it wouldn't have rung true, I think is what it is. But it's very truthful, I think.
I think that comes from sharing our truths, both, for collaborators in front of and behind the camera. The way that I work is kind of by giving an offering and saying, this is where it's coming from for me. This is the emotional truth, my emotional truth in this story. And when you work in that kind of vulnerable way, often people say, wonderful, and here's mine. And so you're all working from that place, and it's a very honest, very vulnerable, sometimes scary, but very exciting way to work. That yielded a movie that, whether it's not a movie for everybody, but one thing that I have found in sharing the film is that, if you were at the Q&A last night, people stand up and share their experiences, and that's a really moving thing to happen, where they stand up and they say, last night somebody said, I've gotten the phone call. And, in an ideal world, the film opens up channels of communication and conversations that weren't happening before.
And also just, like I said, the actors are incredible. And if you didn't have the right actors, I think you took a lot of risks too for this being your first film. You could have made something that was a little more conventional, and you went there and you took us on a journey that is both scary and beautiful. So what are you working on now? What other adventures are you?
So I'm working on 2 films right now. So I'm almost finished with a short documentary that was kind of birthed out of this film in a wild way. So I don't know if you heard in the credits, there's the only lyrical piece of music is by this artist and musician named Lonnie Holly. And Lonnie's Atlanta-based. He's a tremendous spirit. He has an incredible story, and he's a remarkable artist. And in the process of collaborating with him on this film, we became close, and I decided to make a film. We decided together to make this short film, and it's almost finished. And it's wild and it's really incredible because it's about kind of why he makes work. And it's very specific to him. And then I'm working on my next feature, which I have written and I'm sending out and hope to be shooting in the not-so-distant future.
Well, we hope to have you back here in Dallas. So thank you for sharing your film with the Dallas audience.
Thank you so much for having me.